Welcome, Wargamers, to the final day of Tzeentch Week. And we're going to be tackling the arcanites and the cults of change. Now, we spoke a little bit about this. I'll kind of clarify what the cults mean as we go on. We touched on it with Zangors yesterday, but really what I'm talking about is that kind of insidious evil, the mortal followers of Tzeentch that reside in the dark depths of cities and bastions of order, stuff like that. It's very, very cool. Now, when you open your Disciples of Tzeentch book and you flip over to the Tzeentch Arcanite section, the first paragraph clearly talks about the slaves to darkness, right? It acknowledges the fact that Tzeentch has always had mighty warriors and tribesmen from around the realms and in the old world as well, who fought for the Changer of Ways' name. But it also points out that those kinds of warriors weren't enough to satisfy Tzeentch's plans. So he came up with a new strategy, something far more insidious, and so it kind of pays homage to those types of units, the Slaves to Darkness with a Mark of Tzeentch, if you will, in terms of gameplay, but also transitions and says, but here's another exciting aspect of those same mortal followers. And I love that it makes the distinction between the two, but it really does lend credibility to the first one. Now, the term Tzeentch Arcanite clearly defines the subversive and hidden part of the Tzeentchian armies. And Arcanites really have two kind of subcategories. One is the Zangors, which we of course talked about yesterday, but the one I want to focus on today has more to do with the cults and Carrick acolytes that reside inside Order cities. To put it simply, it's a group of undercover Tzeentch mortals who infiltrate the bastions of Order and sow chaos and discord from within. They use illusionary magics to keep themselves hidden from organizations like Stormcast Eternals, Witch Hunters, those kinds of things who are tasked with rooting out evil. They disguise themselves, literally cloak themselves in magic. Now, in its description of the cults, the book really kind of bounces all over the place. You have to kind of read the whole thing and then reread it to kind of get a good understanding. I'm going to try and put it in a more logical format in terms of, presenting information here. But what's important to note right off the bat as we talk about these kind of insidious, evil from within things, that some of these cults at the time of the Disciples of Tzeentch book coming out have existed for generations. Now, they can do this because there is a time gap between when the Realm Gate Wars series ended and when we picked back up at the end of the, I believe it was called the Seasons of Life or War, whatever the big global campaign was when we were fighting for Order cities. There was actually at least 100-year gap in that time. And with that, as Order cities were springing up, the seeds of these cults was being planted. And so now that the setting is much more established and there's kind of older encampments and settlements, these cults can exist and flourish. And really what they focus on is corrupting the intellectual, the power, the elite of the society, maybe military leaders, political leaders for sure, anyone who has a deep understanding of the arcane and seeks knowledge or counsel, and it turns them to the side of Tzeentch, making them his servants on the mortal realms. And there's a few ways that this kind of disarray and chaos takes form. You could stir up military revolts against a free guild, right? All it takes is one officer to be like, I don't want to go fight for these people over here in Garan. I'm not going to take orders. And you stir up the pot and all the other warriors who don't want to give their lives up for it. Yeah, I'll start grumbling and they fight together. So little minor revolts like that are a huge deal. They can also do misinformation. All it takes is one person in a military chain of command. Remember, they don't have instant messenger, nothing like that. Archaon's the only person with his Gaunt Summoners that has a true communications network. So all it takes is one person in an information link to give bad information or simply not pass it along, and you can really disrupt military efforts on a grand scale. And lastly, just infiltrating the government, just redirecting funds and resources and armaments, everything like that. So there's a lot of ways that these cults can impact society in Order bastions, in Order cities. Now, while the cult will take all comers from all kinds of different lifestyles and that, it really prizes and focuses on those people from high society, the ones who, the whole point of a cult is to change the way an Order city functions to the end goal of Tzeentch, right? So you need to have people who have status and office who can make big changes. And if anyone in these kind of high rung of societies is found out for being a Tzeentch follower, the illusionary disguise drops and the whole cult attacks in unison, and you have a huge revolt coming from inside the city, which is of course not where Order armies are expecting it. It is also important to note that the numbers, the sheer numerical power behind these guys is actually always bigger than people suspect. A witch hunter might come into a town and say, I bet there's 10 cultists here, and all of a sudden the illusion comes off and there's 120 and they have no idea how they're going to take on this kind of an army from the inside. Okay, so that's what a cult does, but what makes up a cult, right? Well, I actually want to quote part of the battle tome because I absolutely fell in love with this description, okay? A scribe pores over dusty books, seeking reward for his research, answers to his many questions. What would an individual sacrifice to possess arcane knowledge? How far would one debase oneself to unlock a secret hidden for untold ages? Thus are many of the brightest minds led astray, lured onwards in a quest for enlightenment. One secret leads to another, until, by slow increments, a soul has been bartered away for more than it ever meant to. These people who are seeking knowledge, seeking betterment, whether it's for themselves, maybe a loved one passed away and they're seeking a way to bring them back or communion with them. You know, anytime someone is desperately seeking arcane knowledge, it catches the eye of the cults in those cities. So again, these are going to be your educated elites, your political power bases, and those things. The cult recruits from those things and from the most zealous researchers of arcane knowledge and science. A cult is usually centered around one or more sorcerers, rarely ever one, but a small one, like a brand new one, may just have one leader. And to give you an example, these leaders might be a Zangor shaman, a magister, or a fate master, are just a few examples. And they'll handpick a few people and bring them into a coven and kind of start, like that's like the core element, the core leadership unit of leaders and disciples and things like that, people pursuing Tzeentch's will and magic knowledge. The official term for this kind of leadership core structure is called the cabal. And while the sorcerer leads, kind of a bird's eye view, leads everything from atop, the lower echelons of the cabal will be responsible for recruitment, maintaining secrecy, those kinds of things, as well as ensuring that the plans laid in motion come to fruition. And I can't stress enough how much secrecy is a huge theme at the heart of every single cult. They operate as independent cells, and they always stay limited in number. For example, as a cult develops, it might get kind of unwieldy to have one person in a cabal handle recruitment, so they'll make a second cabal, okay, and then a third and a fourth, and so this kind of blossoms. Now they never have more than 9 cabals. Once you reach that point, it's like your leadership structure is so big that it's hard to hide, so they'll break off and they'll have 9 mini cults and they'll start all over again until those make 9 and kind of multiply that way. And in that sense, they are sprinkled all around the mortal realms, and you can have multiple cults in one city and they'll never know about each other because that's how secretive they are. The book even points out that only Tzeentch knows how many cults are in the mortal realms. Also, their plans may contradict. Let's say, for example, you're in a order city, let's pick Hammerhall, okay? And it's your cult's responsibility to disrupt military efforts. So you might go in and sabotage all the steam tanks, right? You'll have a guy go through and just bust them all so they're all useless. And you're delaying the order of war effort by several months to repair them. Whereas conversely, another cult that you don't know about at all may be in town and they're saying, okay, we're going to drag all of the, we're going to start a distraction outside the city. All the tanks will go outside and then we'll, invade the palace. But they contradict in the sense that if the tanks are all broken and sitting at the fortress, then they're not being drawn out of the city. So it's one cult can screw over the other one's plans. And so in this sense, a lack of information about each other can really hinder you, but it adds a whole lot of intrigue. Now, philosophically, each cult is also based around sort of a different aspect of Tzeentch. There are a few examples here that I really want to share with you. The cult of oracles centers around portents and prophecies. These are guys who love the future-telling aspect of Tzeentch, whereas the cult of transient form focuses heavily on mutations. They think that the physical expression of change and warp is what really exemplifies Tzeentch as God. Lastly, there's the cult of 1,000 Eyes, which really focuses on secrecy, kind of the hidden knowledge aspect of Tzeentch, right? That theme of hidden information. And of course, every single cult thinks they are the number one, right? They all think that they have the best defining feature of Tzeentch, that they have a true understanding of its form, and ultimately that they are the best servants. Now, the base unit of a cult, right, is a cultist, as we would normally call them, is the Carrick Acolyte. And these guys come, like I said, from all walks of life. The best ones are the ones with high authority and high society, and in that sense, it can take decades to properly groom someone to become a Carrick Acolyte. Their careers followed, you have to make sure that this person's not going to rat you out, that when you share the idea of Tzeentch with them, they're not going to be revolted in horror, that you've kind of progressed their relationship over time so that they are willing and excited to accept it. And in this sense, many of these kind of aspirants are weeded out. And only the most devoted can take the Carrick test of 9, which is basically just a series of 9 tests or trials that someone has to go through in order to become a Carrick acolyte. Now, every cult has their own version of it. Every cult has a 9-part testing series to get someone to being a Carrick acolyte. They are all very different. I assume they're very dependent on the realm and what kind of resources are available, what the tone of the cult is, and what it focuses on about Tzeentch. But they all end the same way. The last test in any cult is going to be walking through warp fire. And in that warp fire, Tzeentch is like looking into the depth of your soul and seeing if there's any deceit in you, right? Are you really a follower of Tzeentch or are you not? Now here's the thing. If you walk through the warp fire and you get burned, you're just dead. You're just toast. Because Tzeentch doesn't trust you and they can't let you walk out of there alive because you know too much. However, if you walk through it and on the other side you are unharmed, you go through a radical transformation. When you step out of the fire, your body bulks up to like a superhuman form. Your muscles grow strong. Your magical ability just absolutely changes radically, become a powerful spellcaster, and you become a Carrick acolyte. Those super brawny, muscular men that we see in the model kit. The battle tome describes frail and kind of weak old scholars going through this trial, and they come out, they're like young and fit and super strong. Now, the first spell that any Carrick acolyte learns, kind of innately, is an illusion spell to make themselves look like they used to be before they went in the fire. In this sense, you can go through this transformation and no one will ever know. And this is how they do it, right? This is how they recruit people. This is how high echelons of society do these transformations and fall to Tzeentch, and no one actually knows about it because the form, the true transformation, is so hidden. And also when they do this change, they're given a mask, that kind of gold, kind of half moon kind of shaped looking face, and that's to protect their identity. In fact, the book points out that not everyone knows who is actually in their own cult. It's almost reminiscent of like Fight Club. If you've ever seen the movie Fight Club or read the book, of course, there's a section where the main character who started the actual club is surprised to learn that there's a second meeting because this whole organization has gotten so much bigger than he initially realizes, and that's exactly the kind of theme and tone that I get from this battle tome. And again, every Carrick acolyte has the exact same mission: to use their office and their power to bring the changing will of Tzeentch about. And with that, feuds begin, political alliances are torn apart, resources suddenly go missing, reinforcements are not requested, etc. All the things that they can do to cripple society from the inside, and then when it's totally crippled and at the right moment, they will strike. Now, why are they cool? Why are the cults and the Carrick acolytes cool units and ideas? Well, frankly, this is chaos at its most insidious, okay? You ever wonder how societies go from being good to bad? It doesn't happen overnight. Right? It's rotting away at the core. It's not an enemy at the doorstep. And this is a new type of warfare that we haven't seen in the mortal realms. When this book came out, this was a radical departure from what we've gotten in the lore so far. Everything in these books has always been, oh, you're a good guy. And then someone else goes, you're a bad guy, right? And you're clearly good or you're clearly evil. There's nothing in between. But this whole aspect adds intrigue. It adds distrust. Now the good guys can't trust each other, right? So are they, quote unquote, so good? If you're really into these kind of stories about that kind of covert insidiousness, the book City of Secrets details a cult in one of the Order cities, and it is a phenomenal read. On a personal level, I love the theme of these kind of cult uprisings. If you play 40k, the Army Gene Stealer cult does something very, very similar, where they kind of recruit new members and kind of grow until the right moment happens, and then they strike and just destroy everything. And the reason I love that is because here's the thing. Think about this. For an Order army, what is a sign of success, right? Safe cities and lands that are reclaimed for order and pushing back chaos. But think about this army, right? What is their prime target and kind of their breeding ground? Safe cities and lands that have been reclaimed for chaos because no one's looking there. And that is awesome. When you can flip that idea of success into a detriment, like thematically, I think it's a cool narrative device. Yeah, Sigmar feels really good that he's built these grand cities and people are feeling safe again, but it's all an illusion because it's just a different kind of danger. Nothing is safe. And because of that, this creates a lot of headaches for keeping order in the cities. Is anyone who dissents or decries, kind of how things need to be, is that person a cult member? Are they trying to stir the pot, or are they just having a difference of opinion? Where do you draw the line on free opinions before you take away that freedom, right? Before you start doing a witch hunt and calling anyone who dissents a cultist. Again, the whole point of reestablishing these cities is that order can prosper. Sigmar wants people to have a full and free life, but now you have to question all those things. And it opens a Pandora's box of narrative ideas and very real struggles. Because the threat is real, but the cost of eliminating that threat is just too high. Sigmar doesn't want to remove anyone's free will. Otherwise, there's no point, right? He might as well just let Nagash rule everything, because then chaos would be no more in these cities. But the cost of allowing that kind of free will to disagree, to stir the pot, to have arguments, heated debates, is that cults like these are insidious and will grow within that kind of temperament. In short, the insidious nature of cults and the stories that they can create, that flipping success into a weakness and adding that kind of character depth of mistrust, makes these guys amazing. And folks, those are my thoughts on the Carrick Acolytes and the Arcanite cults. I really hope that you've enjoyed Tzeentch. I know that I certainly have. And I look forward to seeing you next week on Monday in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want to introduce you to some awesome folks. These are my patrons over on Patreon, and they make this show possible by their direct support of me to buy battle tomes and Black Library books and all the material I need and the hardware support that I need to make this stuff possible. And if you'd like to join them, go ahead and click over to the Patreon page, to the link in the description down below, and you'll be introduced to a really awesome community of people talking about the hobby, sharing what they're painting. I invite them to be part of polls to decide what content comes next. I raffle off every battle tome that I review, and we're having some great fun and discussions over there. So go ahead and check it out. Now, if you can't support in that way, that's completely fine. I'm just so glad that you watched this video here today. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question, go ahead and click subscribe and leave it in the comments down below. I read every single question and comment. I respond to as many as I possibly can, but I use them all as inspiration for future videos. So go ahead and do that now. And I look forward to seeing you guys on my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.